A few years ago, I made a video covering some games based on multi-billionaire, reality show host, and presidential candidate Donald Trump. A simpler time it was. Well, we're currently in the end game of his first term, so I thought now would be a good time to revisit the topic. Once again, I won't be giving any direct political opinions here, but it doesn't really matter because I'm sure a lot of you are going to do it for me anyway. Join me as I take a look at some more games based on the very first pumpkin to become president. Real quick before getting into the video, this isn't a sponsor or anything, but I want to talk about microphones because I have a microphone problem. So the mic you're currently listening to was provided by Neat Microphones and it's called the King Bee. Now they sent me the product for free and nothing is required of me, but I do want to quickly talk about a product I feel could benefit other creators or those interested in getting into video production, music, or voiceover. For those of you familiar with the microphone company Blue, makers of a bunch of really amazing microphones and also the Blue Yeti, Neat Microphones was founded by some of the people who started Blue, and their designs seem to be just as extravagant. Now there's no special link or coupon or anything like that, and I'll spare you the details of why their mics are currently selling for the prices that they are, but basically their entire line of mics, including the one you're hearing right now, which previously sold for $350, are all currently under $100, and apparently they're staying there. If you're in the market for a mic, I highly suggest checking out Neat Microphones. They've recently revamped their brand and started really trying to push themselves as a company that makes high-quality studio equipment available to everyone, and if I'm being honest, their King Bee was already worth well over the $350 they were originally charging for it, and now that it's set at only $99, it's quite frankly a steal. So go check them out. I'll leave a link in the description. Now on to the video. So this first one is called Thum, a game in which you have to thump Trump. It's an endless runner and I couldn't get very far in it. Oftentimes these games are mindless, but this one is actually pretty difficult and requires a good amount of attention and quick reaction time. So the object is to run in a straight line indefinitely, avoiding banana peels, manholes, and Trump. If you knock into Trump, he'll swing his mighty golf club at your face, ending up in a game over. If you manage to thump him though, he'll drop his hairpiece, which then serves as one of the game's collectibles, along with stars, which also add to your score. Now I really can't say this game is garbage because it's not offensively in-your-face bad, but there's just not much here. It's not engaging or anything, and you game over so easily that there isn't much incentive to even keep playing since all the game consists of is an ever-increasing score. Weaving between the objects that knock you down is actually a bit difficult, but once you get the hang of the weird needle you need to thread, it's all doable. This isn't fun though, and it's just a game that should be mindless, but instead demands a bunch of precision you probably wouldn't want to give it. Taco Trump Down is an 8-bit style arcade kind of game where you play as a flying Mexican man trying to destroy any of the structures Trump builds by pelting them with tacos. The only thing you can do is fly back and forth, and you shoot the tacos at a fixed diagonal angle and you're constantly moving, so aiming is a bit tricky. The game starts out easy but gradually increases in difficulty as seen in the top right corner of the screen. So little Trump runs back and forth building things at random that you need to take down by shooting them. Most of the structures go down in a couple hits, but the more concrete looking ones, which I'm assuming is Trump's infamous wall, take a lot more hits to actually destroy. If you don't take them out by the time he makes his way back though, he'll continue to build on them and they'll gain height. I'm assuming you'll get a game over if it reaches the top of the screen, but I feel like you'd need to intentionally not aim for them for that to happen. As the game starts to ramp up in difficulty, you start getting new obstacles thrown at you. First it's balloons, which end your run if you collide with any of them. At first they're super easy to avoid, but as the game goes on, more and more appear on screen, making them harder to dodge. Eventually, Trump starts building steak stores. These buildings launch juicy pixelated steaks into the air, and once again, if they hit you, you lose. This is basically the whole game, and like many others of this genre, it's all about seeing how far you can get. There is one more mechanic in the game, and that's this hot chili pepper. It's basically a power-up, and when you manage to grab it, you have diarrhea. The object then is to poop on Trump. The thing is though, besides clearing the screen of any currently spawned hazards, I wasn't really able to see any benefit to actually pooping on him. It doesn't get you like an extra life or progress the game in any way. As far as I can tell, all it really does besides clear the stage of hazards is increase your score just a little bit. That's pretty much the whole game. This one is basically a Doodle Jump clone. A Doodle Trump, if you will. You play as Trump hopping his way to the top of the polls. So like Doodle Jump, you ascend an endless upward corridor collecting points, or in this game's case, votes, while avoiding hazards and trying not to fall to your doom. There's an endless amount of platforms which act as bounce pads to gradually ascend. As you make your way up, you collect stars to increase your votes, as well as picking up some power-ups. The two best being one which turns Trump into a giant statue, and another which lets Trump ride on the back of a giant bald eagle. These not only give you a giant leap upward, but also let you collect a bunch of points on your way up while passing by every possible hazard. The bald eagle still does require you to take a little control to pick up stuff, but the statue is so big it pretty much has the whole screen covered. The game's normal enemies or hazards come in the form of other politicians as well as what looks to be news reporters, and you can either avoid them entirely or defeat them by pressing the spacebar. Doing so has Trump spew some random garbage out of his mouth, which then wipes the hazards off the stage. And by garbage I mean it's just him repeating, "You're a liar." There's also these little Ted Cruz heads floating around, and if you land on them you get a big upward boost. It's basically
like a normal platform, except it lets you leap a good deal higher. If you've seen one game like this, you've seen them all, and ultimately, it's about getting the highest score you possibly can before getting a game over. Apparently, this game is also available on mobile, so if you really need your Trump jump fix on the go, the devs came in clutch for you. Are you a big Streets of Rage fan but always wished you could play as Donald J. Trump? Well, now's your chance. Lucky you, huh? No Longer Surrender is a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you play as Trump fighting back against the evil forces of CNN to stop fake news once and for all. In typical beat-em-up fashion, you move along a set path defeating hordes of enemies one by one to gradually progress forward. The controls are simple. Use the arrow keys to move and Z, X, and C to either punch, kick, or block, respectively. There's also barrels which, if destroyed, reveal water bottles which can be used as weapons to deal extra damage, and crates which house stakes that Trump can use to get a little health back. Now, I started to have a little fun with this. Probably less due to the gameplay itself and more so due to how ridiculous this is, but unfortunately it all ended before it ever really began. See, when you lose all your health, Trump ragdolls to the ground and you get a game over screen. This also happens when you beat the stage. It's essentially the exact same screen except the text says round clear instead of game over, but the text below it saying click to restart ultimately has you meeting the same fate anyway. An endless loop of the same extremely short stage over and over. What a waste. Here's one called Alene, and it's once again a simple high-score game. I sound like I'm repeating myself now, but the object is to collect as many votes as possible while avoiding hazards, running the gamut from an assortment of politicians to miscellaneous inanimate objects. The trampoline, which lies at the bottom of the screen, keeps Trump constantly bouncing into the air, and the idea is to get as high of a score as possible while trying to not get knocked off the stage by one of the hazards. Using the left and right arrow keys moves Trump back and forth, and holding the down arrow key slams Trump down quickly, which not only is useful for dodging hazards, but also makes Trump bounce higher afterward. Each time you lose and restart, the game cycles through various different stage backgrounds, which range from the White House to the Taj Mahal in Las Vegas, and even the Great Trump Wall, which doesn't exist. That's about all this game has to offer. Have you ever wished there was a JRPG starring Donald Trump? Good news. Trump RPG, the fart of the deal, is exactly that. It's a turn-based JRPG where you play as Trump being Trump. When the game first starts, you can explore the White House and talk to NPCs, find items, as well as save your progress. You know, typical RPG stuff. Soon after that, though, you're off to Canada to complete the game's first objective. It's here that you actually get into some battles and level up a bit. As you explore the area, you'll fight a bunch of snowmen as well as hockey players and gradually level up until you get to the game's first boss, a giant snowman. After that, there's a town to explore complete with buildings to enter and NPCs to interact with, as well as a shop to stock up on healing items like Diet Coke. I didn't play far enough to keep exploring because I really wasn't about to sink a bunch of hours into an RPG, but the game seems to be split into different sections by way of the Air Force One, which can take you to various countries, of which Canada is the only one initially available. The Air Force One can, however, take you to a golf minigame where you basically have to push a golf ball into a hole, and it's a lot like any of the sliding rock puzzles from Pokemon or Zelda, and if you win, you get an equipable item. Considering almost every game in this video has been a quick arcade-style flash game, like I said, I wasn't willing to sink a bunch of hours into this, but it's apparent to me that this game has a lot more content than what I've covered here. So if you want to see all the content a JRPG starring Donald Trump has to offer, knock your socks off. This one, I'm ashamed to say, was a little fun. Sort of. But that's probably just because I happen to really like golf games. Take what I say with a grain of salt because my bar is set pretty low at this point. This is basically Angry Birds meets putt-putt golf meets the President of the United States. It's called Trump Golf, and it's a typical golf game, only it's at a side profile view, and the physics scream Flash game so much that it hurts. The way the ball actually travels reminds me so much of the physics in any of those Flash dirt bike games, and if you play this for just like a minute, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The controls are pretty straightforward. There's two arrows on screen that change the direction of your shot in a clockwise or counterclockwise circle around Trump. To actually hit the ball, you have your typical run-of-the-mill golf video game power meter, and that's basically all you need to know. Use what's available to you to exploit the courses and see how few swings it takes you to get the ball in the hole. At first, the layouts are really simple, but as the stages go on, the game starts introducing some really weird level geometry. Sometimes this makes the hole more interesting, but other times it just makes it frustrating and annoying. This was okay. Nothing to write home about, but it's just a simple golf game with a dash of Trump thrown in. I'm actually pretty confused because I honestly can't tell if this game is supposed to be pro or anti-Trump. Election Punch-Off is quite dated at this point, but this is a boxing game in which Trump or any of the other candidates from the 2016 presidential election duke it out to make their way to the top. Unfortunately, we all know how this story ends. So imagine Wii Sports boxing, only with politicians. You get to choose any of the 4 candidates to fight as, so keeping with the topic of the video, I chose the Don. Much like Wii Sports boxing, there's a bit of mashing, a bit of strategy, and a bit of luck involved. The controls are a little weird, but you use the back and down arrow keys to block low or high, and you use the up and right arrow keys for for a low or high punch. I'm gonna tell you right now, I barely used block and I beat the whole thing just by spamming whichever punch felt good to spam at the time. With enough persistence, I managed to beat Hillary, who acted as the final boss, but only by just a hair left of health. My heart was admittedly pounding at the tail end of it, but I think that had less to do with me wanting to win and more to do with me wanting to not have to play it over again. And that's it. With that, the curtain closes on another year of the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed this little part 2 video. I don't see myself revisiting this topic, but never say never, I guess. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it and want to see more, there's a couple other videos right there you can check out. And if you want to see everything I upload, subscribe and then tap the bell icon. And if you want to help support the channel, I also have a Patreon right there too. Happy New Year!